The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive ring of metal and glass that orbited the diplomatic world below. Inside, representatives from 40 different species sat in their designated sections, watching the holographic displays that showed the terrible news. Another colony had fallen. Another fleet had been destroyed. The Kryn swarm was winning. Tae-young stood at the speaker's platform in the center of the chamber. He was a human, and that meant most of the aliens in the room barely paid attention to him. His gray hair was cut short in military fashion, and his dark eyes carried the weight of battles he never spoke about. The scars on his hands told their own story. "You need human soldiers," Tae-yang said, his voice steady. "We have fought wars for thousands of years. We know how to adapt, how to survive, how to win against enemies that seem impossible to defeat." A clicking sound echoed through the chamber. Admiral Vex's Thor rose from his seat, his crystalline armor catching the light. The insectoid alien was 3 times taller than Tae-yang, and his multifaceted eyes glittered with something like amusement. "You?" Vex Thor's voice came through his translator as a series of sharp sounds. "Humans have been in our galaxy for only 50 years. You barely understand our technology. Your ships are crude. Your weapons are primitive. You still use chemical propellants and solid projectiles." Other council members made sounds of agreement. Some laughed openly. Tae-young felt his jaw tighten, but his voice remained calm. "That is exactly why you need us. The Kryn don't fight like you do. They adapt. They change. They attack in ways you cannot predict because you have forgotten how to fight dirty." "Forgotten?" The High Arbiter Molren spoke from his elevated throne. The ancient reptilian had ruled the council for 2 centuries, and his voice dripped with condescension. "We have evolved beyond the barbarism of close combat and chaos tactics. We use precision. We use formation. We use discipline. And you are losing," Tae-young said flatly. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several species stood, shouting in their native languages. The translator system struggled to keep up. Yuna watched from the human delegation's seats. She was young, barely 30, and this was her first major assignment as a diplomatic aide. Her hands gripped the armrests as she watched her mentor being torn apart by the council's mockery. Vex Thor clicked his mandibles together in what his species considered laughter. "Perhaps we should send the human to fight the Kryn alone. With his rocks and sticks, he could bore them to death with stories of primitive Earth warfare." More laughter. Tae-young stood perfectly still, his face showing nothing. The High Arbiter raised one clawed hand for silence. "We appreciate your offer, Ambassador Tae-young, but the Council has decided. Human forces will not be included in the Coalition fleet. Your technology is incompatible with our systems. Your tactics are outdated. Your presence would only create confusion in our command structure. You are making a mistake," Tae-young said quietly. "The Council has spoken," Molren replied. Tae-young bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that felt hollow. He turned and walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Yuna quickly gathered her datapad and followed him. In the corridor outside, away from the chamber's sensors, Yuna caught up to him. "Ambassador, I am so sorry. They should have listened." Tae-young stopped walking. He looked out through the transparent wall at the stars beyond. "They will listen," he said. "But first, they need to fail. And people will die because of their pride. And, Clixon, what do we do now?" Tae-young pulled out his secure communicator, the one with quantum encryption that no galactic species could crack. He typed quickly, his fingers moving with practiced efficiency. "We prepare," he said. "Earth Fleet Command needs to know that we were refused. They need to mobilize anyway. But if the Council finds out we are sending ships without permission, they will be too busy dying to care." Tae-young interrupted. His voice was cold, but Yuna could see the anger in his eyes. Not anger at her, anger at the waste of it all. "The Kryn will hit Varen's system next. This station, this planet, and the coalition fleet will fall apart like paper in a fire. He finished typing and sent the message. Somewhere, light years away, human admirals would receive his words and begin moving their pieces into position. How long do we have? Yuna asked. 3 weeks, maybe 4. The coalition is gathering their fleet at Kelvar system for a defensive stand. Vex Thor is commanding. Taeyang smiled, but there was no humor in it. He will learn what happens when parade ground tactics meet real war. He will learn quickly, and he will learn with blood. They stood together in silence, watching the diplomatic world turn slowly below. Somewhere in the darkness beyond, the Kryn swarm was moving, consuming, growing. And somewhere else, human warships were beginning to wake up, their crews preparing for a fight that the galaxy said they were not qualified to join. Taeyang thought about the Marines he had known, the soldiers who had fought in the Mars Rebellion and the Titan Wars. He thought about the human capacity for violence when pushed, for creativity when desperate, for stubbornness when told something was impossible. The galaxy was about to learn something important. Humans did not need permission to fight. They just needed a reason, and now they had one. The Kelvar system had once been beautiful. 3 gas giants orbited a young blue star, their rings catching the light like jewels. Now those rings were filled with warships, 400 vessels from 17 different species, all waiting for the storm to arrive. Captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the HSS Indomitable, watching the coalition fleet through his view screen. His ship was small by galactic standards, barely 300 meters long, and it had been assigned to observation duty. The Council's way of keeping humans out of the fight while pretending to include them. They look impressive, Lieutenant Jinnah said from her tactical station. She was young, fresh from the academy, and still believed that impressive appearances meant something in combat. Hyunwoo grunted. He had served in 3 border conflicts and the Luna defense. He knew better. Watch their formations. Every ship in perfect position, perfect spacing, perfect alignment. Isn't that good? It is predictable, Hyunwoo said. And predictable gets you killed. The sensor board chirped. Jin-Ah's hands flew across her controls. Contact. Through the view screen, space itself seemed to writhe. The Kryn swarm did not travel like normal ships. They moved in a living mass. Thousands of bioships that pulsed with organic energy. Each vessel was grown, not built, with armor made of hardened chitin and weapons that fired streams of corrosive acid. Admiral Vex's Thor's voice boomed across the fleet communication channel. All ships, maintain formation. Shields to maximum. Prepare to engage at optimal range. The coalition fleet opened fire when the Kryn reached the designated kill zone. Energy beams lanced out, striking the lead bioships and burning through their armor. Explosions blossomed in the darkness. The first wave of Kryn died before they could return fire. Jin-Ah allowed herself a small smile. They are doing it. They are winning. Hyunwoo said nothing. He watched the Kryn swarm ripple and shift. He had read every report from the previous 3 battles. He knew what came next. The second wave of Kryn ships charged forward, but this time they moved differently. They spiraled and weaved, never staying in one vector for more than a few seconds. The coalition's targeting systems struggled to track them. Fewer shots connected. The Kryn closed the distance. Then the Kryn opened fire. Streams of bioacid hit the coalition shields, and something impossible happened. The shields flickered. They held, but they weakened far faster than they should have. How? Jin-Ah whispered. The shields should stop that. The Kryn adapted, Hyunwoo said grimly. They changed the molecular composition of their weapons. Mid-battle, the shields are only 40% effective now. Vex Thor's orders came rapidly, but they were all textbook responses. Titan formation. Concentrate fire. Rotate shield frequencies. Everything by doctrine. Everything the enemy could predict because the coalition had been using the same tactics for 200 years of peacetime skirmishes. The Kryn swarm split into 3 groups. One group hit the coalition's left flank. Another group circled to attack from above. The third group crashed straight into the center, accepting terrible losses but creating chaos in the perfect formations. Ships collided as captains tried to maintain position while under fire. Coordination broke down. Individual vessels began making their own decisions. But they had no experience with independent action. They were trained to follow the plan. And now the plan was failing. Hyunwoo watched a Kulari cruiser take 3 acid hits to its starboard side. The shields failed. The hull dissolved. Atmosphere vented into space, carrying the screaming crew with it. "Sir, we should help them," Jinna said, her voice tight. "Our orders are to observe only. We have no authority to engage." Every instinct screamed at him to join the fight, but he had been a soldier long enough to know when to disobey orders and when to wait. The battle became a slaughter. Coalition ships that were designed for long-range precision combat found themselves in a swirling melee. The Kryn swarmed individual vessels, overwhelming their defenses through sheer numbers. Bioships rammed into enemy hulls, their pilots dying in suicide attacks that created breaches for boarding parties. Jinna pulled up tactical data, and her face went pale. "They have lost 140 ships in 3 hours. Sir, at this rate, they will lose the fleet by nightfall." Hyunwoo finished. There was no nightfall in space. But old habits died hard. Vex's Thor's flagship, a massive dreadnought that should have been unsinkable, took concentrated fire from 20 Kryn bioships. Its shields collapsed. Acid ate through the command deck. The admiral managed to evacuate in an escape pod, but his ship died in a ball of expanding gas and debris. The retreat order came 30 minutes later. What remained of the coalition fleet scattered, each ship fleeing toward the nearest jump point. The Kryn did not pursue. They had already won. Hyunwoo received the emergency broadcast on all channels. The Kryn swarm was reorganizing. Their next target was confirmed. Varan Prime. The diplomatic world. 72 hours. Until arrival. He looked at his crew. 18 men and women who trusted him to make the right choice. "Helm. Plot a course. We are leaving Kelvar system. Back to human space, sir?" the helmsman asked, hopefully. "No," Hyunwoo said. He pulled up a star chart and marked a location. "Here. Rendezvous point Tango 7. If I am right, Earth fleet is already on its way. We are going to meet them." "That is against orders, sir," Jinna said quietly. "Yes." Hyunwoo agreed. "Court-martial me later. Right now, we have work to do." The Indomitable turned away from the debris field and jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the wreckage of Galactic Pride floating in the darkness. And in that wreckage, a single Kryn scout ship remained, analyzing the battle data. It had noted the small human vessel that had watched but not fought. The ship's biocomputer processed the information and assigned a threat rating. Negligible. The scout ship filed the report and moved on. The swarm had bigger prey to hunt. The humans were not worth the effort. Space tore itself apart at the edge of Varan's system. The fabric of reality rippled and split, and through the wounds in space came the human fleet. Fleet Admiral Bo Ra stood on the bridge of the HSS Defiant, her flagship, and watched the tactical display populate with friendly contacts. 150 warships. Not the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, but it was what Earth could spare on short notice. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark view screen, and she studied the scar that ran from her left temple to her jaw. A gift from the Mars Rebellion, when enemy boarding parties had tried to take her first command. "All ships have arrived safely, Admiral," her communications officer reported. "No jump casualties. Fleet is at 97% combat readiness." "Good. Get me a tactical picture." "Where are the survivors of the coalition fleet?" The holographic display shifted, showing the inner system. 38 battered alien vessels limped in orbit around Varan Prime. trying to repair damage while civilian transports evacuated the planet below. The Kryn swarm would arrive in 48 hours. They do not have enough ships to stop the swarm, her tactical officer said. Not after Kelvar. No, Bo-Ra agreed. They don't. But we do. She opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, this is Bo-Ra. I know you are tired. I know we just jumped 300 light years. But there are civilians down there, and there is an enemy coming that thinks we are too primitive to matter. We are going to teach them what humans do when someone makes that mistake. Prepare for combat operations. Voda out. In the troop bay of the assault carrier HSS Hammer, Colonel J1 walked among his Marines. The 5th Drop Corps was 3,000 strong, men and women who volunteered to be the first ones off the ship and into the enemy. They sat on benches in full combat gear, checking weapons and running diagnostic tests on their armor. Listen up, J1's voice carried through the bay. He was not tall, but he had presence. 20 years of combat gave a person that quality. The aliens think we are playing soldier. They think our weapons are toys. They think we don't belong in their war. He paused, making eye contact with several Marines. They are going to learn different. The Kryn fight dirty. Good. We invented dirty. They adapt. Good. We adapt faster. They think swarm tactics will overwhelm us. Well, we have been fighting in cities, in tunnels, in jungles, in space stations for 10,000 years. This is what we do. Sergeant Hannah sat in the 3rd row, field stripping her rifle for the 5th time. She had served under J1 for 7 years, and she knew his speeches by heart. But they worked. Around her, scared kids were turning into soldiers. Sergeant Hannah, J1 called out. Tell them what we fight with. J1. Hannah stood, grinning. Sir, we fight with good old-fashioned bullets, explosives, and attitude. Nothing fancy. Nothing the enemy can hack or jam or turn against us. Just reliable weapons that make reliable holes in the enemy. The Marines laughed. Some of the tension broke. Private Dong-Hyun laughed with them, but his hands shook as he loaded magazines into his vest pouches. This was his first real deployment. He had joined to see the galaxy, and now he was about to fight aliens that ate entire worlds. An older Marine next to him, Corporal Min-Soo, noticed the shaking hands. First time is always scary, kid. But remember your training. Stay with your squad. Do your job. That is all you need to think about. What if I freeze? Dong-Hyun asked quietly. Then someone will unfreeze you with a boot to your ass, Min-Soo said bluntly. But you won't freeze. When the shooting starts, training takes over. Trust yourself. On the bridge of the Defiant, Bo-Ra received an incoming communication request. The face that appeared on her screen was Admiral Vex Thor. He looked diminished without his armor, his chitin dull and cracked. Admiral Bo-Ra, this is Admiral Vex Thor of the Coalition Forces. We welcome your arrival, but I must inform you that I retain overall command of the defense. Please integrate your ships into our battle formation. Bo-Ra smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. Vex Thor's mandibles clicked in confusion. I do not understand. We must have unified command. You had unified command at Kelvar, Bo-Ra said flatly. You lost 260 ships. So here is what will happen instead. Your ships will defend Varan Prime's orbital space. My ships will engage the Kryn in deep space. You will stay out of our way. This is unacceptable. You cannot. I can. And I will. You had your chance to fight your way. It did not work. Now we fight our way. Bo-Ra out. She cut the connection before he could respond. Her tactical officer looked nervous. Admiral, the Council will protest this. They could bring charges. Let them try, Bo-Ra said. After we win. She pulled up the fleet disposition and began making changes. Her ships spread out in what looked like random positions to anyone trained in standard galactic tactics. No parade formations. No perfect spacing. Each ship had independent firing solutions and fallback positions. They would fight as individuals who could support each other, not as a rigid structure that would shatter under pressure. On one of the civilian evacuation transports, Counselor Yuna pressed her face against the viewport, watching the human fleet position itself. She had seen Taeyang's warning ignored. She had seen the coalition fleet destroyed. Now, she was seeing humanity's answer. A Varan civilian next to her, a elderly Molren with pale blue scales, shook his head. Such a small fleet. And they are not even in proper formation. This is madness. Yuna remembered Taeyang's words. She looked at the human ships, seeing the carriers launching thousands of small fighters, seeing the frigates bristling with missile pods, seeing the strange angular hulls that looked brutal and efficient, rather than elegant. No, she said quietly. This is hope. The sensor alarms began to sound. At the edge of the system, space was changing again. But this time, the change was organic. The Kryn swarm was arriving early, 100,000 bioships that blotted out the stars. On the Defiant, Bo-Ra watched them come. She had seen the recordings from Kelvar. She knew what they could do. But she also knew something the Kryn did not. Humans had been fighting impossible odds since before they learned to make fire. All ships, she said calmly. Weapons free. Show them what humans do. The human fighters launched first. Not dozens. Not hundreds. Thousands of small craft poured from the carrier bays like angry insects. Each one piloted by a human who had trained for exactly this moment. They were not as advanced as galactic fighters. They were faster, meaner, and they flew like their pilots had a death wish. The Kryn swarm's bioships opened fire, streams of acid cutting through space. But the human fighters did not fly in formation. They scattered, weaving and diving in patterns that seemed random, but were actually carefully practiced chaos. The Kryn targeting systems, evolved to track orderly prey, struggled to predict which direction each fighter would go next. On the Defiant, Bo-Ra watched the tactical display light up with thousands of contacts. Missile frigates, fire pattern Delta 7. I want saturation across their forward elements. 50 frigates opened their launch tubes simultaneously. 2,000 missiles streaked toward the Kryn swarm, their warheads simple but effective. No fancy energy weapons that could be adapted to, just high explosive charges that created massive kinetic impacts. The first wave of missiles detonated in the Kryn formation. Bioships cracked apart, their organic armor unable to withstand the concentrated explosions. The swarm recoiled, then surged forward, with renewed fury. They are closing fast, Admiral, her tactical officer reported. 40,000 kilometers in closing. Good, Bo-Ra said. That is exactly what we want. All ships, prepare for knife fighting range. Get close and make them bleed. The human fleet accelerated toward the enemy. Not away, toward. Every galactic species fought at long range where shields and precision weapons gave them an advantage. Humans had learned a different lesson in their bloody history. Close quarters meant chaos. And humans thrived in chaos. The two fleets collided like ancient armies on a medieval battlefield. Human destroyers rammed through Kryn formations, their reinforced hulls, designed to take punishment. Railguns fired solid slugs at point-blank range, punching through bioarmor with brutal efficiency. The Kryn fired back, their acid weapons burning through human shields. But at this range, human armor plating took the damage and kept fighting. Captain Hyun-woo brought the Indomitable into the fight, his small ship dancing between larger vessels. Torpedoes away! Give them something to remember us by. 2 plasma torpedoes slammed into a Kryn cruiser analog, burning through its central mass. The bioship convulsed and died, drifting in the darkness. Jinnah worked her tactical station with desperate speed, marking targets and coordinating with nearby ships. Sir, 3 Kryn vessels are trying to flank us. Then we go through them instead of around, Hyun-woo ordered. All power to forward shields. Ram speed. The Indomitable's engines flared white-hot. The small ship accelerated directly at the nearest Kryn vessel, firing every weapon it had. At the last second, Hyunwoo pulled up hard, the Indomitable's armored keel scraping along the bioship's hull and tearing a massive wound. The Kryn ship broke apart. "That is for Kelvar," Hyunwoo muttered. On Varan Prime's surface, the Kryn had not waited for the space battle to finish. Drop pods rained from orbit, massive organic sacs that burst open on impact, spilling thousands of ground combat forms. They were insectoid nightmares, four-legged creatures with slashing claws and acid glands that could dissolve steel. Colonel J1 watched them come from the command post hastily set up in the city's central district. "All units, hold your positions. Let them come to us. We fight them in the streets, where their numbers mean less." The Kryn surged forward like a living tide. They expected the defenders to break and run. Instead, they ran into prepared positions, interlocking fields of fire, and an enemy that had been perfecting urban warfare for centuries. Sergeant Hana crouched behind a ruined wall with her squad, watching the Kryn approach through her helmet's sensors. "Steady," she whispered. "Let them get close. Real close. 50 meters, 40, 30. Now, the street erupted in fire. Mines detonated, tearing through Kryn formations. Machine gun fire raked across the survivors. Grenades arced through the air, their fragmentary payloads shredding organic armor. The Kryn recoiled, confused. Their prey was supposed to run, not fight back with such ferocity. "Move to secondary position," Hana ordered. Her squad fell back through pre-planned routes, using the buildings themselves as cover. The Kryn followed, charging into what they thought was a retreat. Instead, they found another ambush. Human Marines fired from windows, from rooftops, from basements. The Kryn were fighting on human terms now, in the close-quarters nightmare that human soldiers had been born into. Private Dong-hyun fired his rifle until the barrel was hot enough to burn through armor. He was terrified. He was exhausted, but he was also alive, and his training had taken over just like Corporal Minsu had promised. When a Kryn warrior broke through their line, Dong-hyun did not freeze. He drew his sidearm and put 3 rounds into the creature's head at point-blank range. The Kryn fell. Dong-hyun stood over it, breathing hard, and realized he had just killed his first enemy. There was no time to process that feeling. More were coming. Colonel J1 studied the tactical map. The Kryn were losing cohesion. Their swarm tactics worked in open space, but in the urban environment, they were fighting in small groups, and humans were experts at small unit tactics. "Push forward," he ordered. "Retake the northern district. Make them pay for every meter." The human Marines advanced, singing war songs over their communications network. It was an old tradition, dating back to ancient times when warriors sang to keep their courage up. The Kryn had no concept of this. They found it disturbing. These small creatures that refused to break, that actually seemed to enjoy the fight. In orbit, Bo-Ra watched her fleet's casualty reports climb. 62 ships damaged, 23 destroyed. The Kryn were dying in far greater numbers, but they had numbers to spare. "Admiral," her sensor officer called out, "I have found something. There is a bioship at the center of the swarm that is not engaging. It is just coordinating." Bo-Ra pulled up the data. The ship was larger than the others, its biosignature different. "That is their command vessel, the Drone Mother. If we kill it, the swarm loses coordination. It is protected by 10,000 other ships, Admiral." "Then we make a whole," Bo-Ra said. She opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships. This is Bo-Ra. I need 3 frigates, willing to make a suicide run. We have found the enemy command ship. We kill it, we win. I need volunteers." Silence for exactly 2 seconds. Then 3 voices responded simultaneously. 3 captains. 3 crews. 3 ships willing to die so others could live. "You have them, Admiral." Captain Hyunwoo's voice came through. The Indomitable had taken heavy damage, but it could still fly. It has been an honor. Quote, Admiral. Quote, Bora felt her throat tighten. You will be remembered. All ships, cover their approach. Everything we have. The human fleet formed a spear formation. With the 3 volunteer frigates at the tip, they charged directly into the heart of the swarm, weapons firing non-stop, shields burning away under concentrated fire. Behind them, every other human ship provided covering fire, killing Kryn vessels to clear the path. The Indomitable broke through first, its hull glowing red-hot from acid damage. Hyunwoo guided his dying ship directly at the drone mother's hull and launched every boarding pod he had left. Marines in full combat armor rode those pods like ancient cavalry charges, crashing into the bioship's organic surface. Colonel J1 led the boarding party personally. He had left Veron Prime's surface to his subordinates. This was where the battle would be won or lost. Inside the drone mother, the corridors were living things, pulsing walls that secreted acid and hostile organisms. J1's Marines fought their way through with flamethrowers and shotguns, weapons designed for close-quarters hell. Sergeant Hana planted breaching charges on every bulkhead they passed. If we don't make it out, I want this thing to die anyway. They reached the neural core, a vast chamber where the drone mother's consciousness resided. Kryn warriors poured from every opening, defending their mother with suicidal fury. The Marines formed a circle, firing outward, buying time. J1 ran to the core itself, pulling explosive charges from his vest. He armed them one by one, magnetic clamps holding them to the pulsing organic structure. 30 seconds. That was the timer. Everyone out, he shouted. The Marines fought their way back to the boarding pod, dragging their wounded. Hana covered the rear, her rifle's barrel red-hot. They sealed the pod and launched just as the charges detonated. The drone mother's neural core exploded. The bioship convulsed, and across the entire swarm, the effect was immediate. The Kryn stopped coordinating. Individual ships began fleeing in different directions, their unified purpose shattered. The human fleet pressed the advantage, cutting down the confused enemy. The battle was not over, but it was won. Bora watched the swarm retreat and allowed herself one small smile. Then she opened communications to begin rescue operations. They had won, but the cost had been high, and she needed to bring her people home. The medical bay of the HSS Defiant smelled like disinfectant and pain. Sergeant Hana lay on a bed, her left arm wrapped in regenerative bandages after a Kryn warrior had nearly taken it off during the boarding action. She was lucky. The bed next to her was empty now, its previous occupant having died 3 hours after the battle ended. 42,000 dead, she said to the visiting nurse. That is what I heard. 42,000 humans dead. 67 ships destroyed. And we won. The nurse, a young man named Taemin, checked her vitals. Tell that to the families of our dead, Hana said bitterly. Then she sighed. Sorry. I know you are right. It just feels heavy. You know? I know, Taemin said quietly. He had been pulling double shifts, treating the wounded. He had seen things that would give him nightmares for years. But you did it. You went into that thing and killed it. They are calling you heroes. On every news channel in the galaxy. Hana laughed, but it hurt. Heroes. We were just doing our job, down in the troop bay. What remained of the 5th Drop Corps was gathering for a ceremony. They had started with 3,000 Marines. They had lost 814. Private Donghyun stood in formation, his dress uniform crisp, his face carefully neutral. He was no longer a scared kid. The battle had burned that away, leaving something harder underneath. Colonel J1 walked along the ranks, stopping at each Marine to personally pin a combat decoration on their chest. When he reached Donghyun, he paused. I heard about your actions at Checkpoint 7. Held the position for 8 minutes against a full Kryn assault wave. Your squad leader said you saved 20 lives. I was just following orders, sir, Donghyun said. You did more than that, J1 said. He pinned the medal to Donghyun's chest. You did your duty, and you did it well. Your friends who did not make it back would be proud. After the ceremony, Dong Hyun went to the memorial wall, where names of the fallen were being engraved. He found Corporal Min Su's name, the older Marine, who had told him he would not freeze. Dong Hyun placed his hand on the cold metal and made a silent promise. He would be worthy of their sacrifice. He would remember them. In the council chamber that orbited Varan Prime, Ambassador Tae Yang stood once again at the speaker's platform. But this time, the chamber was silent. No laughter. No mockery. Representatives from 40 species watched him with new respect, and, in some cases, fear. High Arbiter Molren spoke first. Ambassador Tae Yang, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer our formal apology. We underestimated your species. We thought your youth made you weak. We understand now that it made you hungry. Hungry to prove yourselves. Hungry to fight. Hungry to survive. Tae Yang nodded slowly. Apology accepted. But understand this. Humans did not save Varan Prime for your approval. We did it because it was right. Because civilians needed protection. Because that is what we do. Fleet Admiral Bo-Ra entered the chamber, walking with a slight limp from where shrapnel had caught her during the battle. She wore her dress uniform, and the decorations on her chest represented 3 decades of combat. She took her place next to Tae Yang and addressed the council. You want to know why humans fight the way we do? Bo-Ra said. I will tell you. We have been at war with ourselves for 10,000 years. We have perfected the art of killing because we have had to. We did not have the luxury of peace while we developed technology. We fought with stones, then spears, then bullets, then missiles, then plasma weapons. Every step of the way, we were trying to kill each other more efficiently. She paused, letting that sink in. You have had peace for centuries. Your ships are beautiful. Your formations are elegant. Your tactics are precise. But they are not tested. Not really. You have had small conflicts, skirmishes, but nothing like the total wars that shaped humanity. The Kryn are total war. They adapt or die. They fight or starve. And that is why they were beating you. Admiral Vex Thor stood from his seat. The proud insectoid who had mocked humans weeks ago now looked diminished. Admiral Bo-Ra, I wish to formally request human military advisors for the Coalition fleet. We need to learn your methods. Round the axes. Lexan Texas. Round the X's Evan. Lexan Texas. One towned. Round the X's Evan. Round the X's Evan. Granted, Bo-Ra said. But understand this. Our methods are brutal. They require individual initiative. They require accepting that plans will fail and adapting on the fly. They require being willing to die for the mission. Can your people learn that? They will have to, Vex Thor said quietly. The Kryn will return, and next time, we need to be ready. Counselor Yuna watched from the diplomatic section. She had seen everything unfold, from Tae Yang's warning to the final battle. She had watched humans fight with a ferocity that shocked the galaxy, and she had also watched them mourn their dead with genuine grief. They were not monsters. They were just very, very good at what they did. After the council session ended, she found Tae Yang on the observation deck, looking out at the reconstruction efforts on Varan Prime below. Human construction ships worked alongside galactic vessels, repairing the damage. Did we teach them? Yuna asked. Or will they forget again? When the danger passes? Tae Yang smiled slightly. They will remember. For a while. Maybe a generation or two. Then they will start to forget, and we will have to remind them again. That is how it works. Peace makes people soft. War makes them hard. The cycle continues. That sounds exhausting. It is. Tae Yang agreed. But that is the burden of being the ones who remember. Someone has to. In deep space, beyond the borders of explored territory, a Kryn survivor vessel limped toward the swarm's home clusters. Its biocomputers processed the battle data, analyzing what had gone wrong. The humans had fought with primitive weapons, but advanced tactics. They had used chaos as a weapon. They had sacrificed themselves without hesitation. The vessel's organic systems compiled all the information into a single report, a warning to the rest of the swarm. It included detailed scans of human soldiers, their weapons, their ships, their capabilities. And at the bottom of the report, in the universal classification system that all cringe ships used, it placed a single word next to the entry for humans. Avoid. The message spread through the swarm's bio network, carried by chemical signals and electromagnetic pulses. A new predator had entered the galaxy, one that fought not with superior technology, but with superior will. One that could not be intimidated, could not be overwhelmed, could not be broken. The swarm would remember this lesson. They would give the humans a wide berth, searching for easier prey elsewhere in the galaxy. They had learned what the Galactic Council had to learn the hard way. Humanity was dangerous not because of what they built, but because of what they were willing to become when pushed. On the frontier between human space and the unknown, patrol ships of Earth fleet maintained their watch. New crews rotated in, replacing the exhausted veterans of the Varan Prime battle. They carried with them a new reputation, one earned in blood and fire. The galaxy had mocked their warnings, but they would not make that mistake again. Humanity had proven itself on the battlefield, had paid the price in lives and ships, and had earned their place among the stars not through diplomacy or technology, but through the oldest currency in the universe, victory. And as the human ships patrolled the darkness, their sensors watching for the next threat, their crews understood something important. This would not be the last battle. There would always be another enemy, another war, another test. Because that was what humanity was built for. Not peace, war, and they would be ready.